Welcome to an international version of Powerful Women Today Live with Yvonne joining us from Spain. All about expanding your business internationally. So let's get to it.
Empowering women on a global scale. Welcome to Powerful Women Today with Carolina Billings. Powerful Women Today is on a mission of inclusion, rewriting his story to include her story, and empowering, raising, and amplifying women's voices with professional speaking, publishing, original podcasting, and web TV. And now here's your host, the founder of Powerful Women Today, Carolina Billings.
Hi, everyone. One of my absolute favorite topics, expanding. And we have, of course, our mentor expert at Powerful Women Today, Yvonne, who specializes in helping businesses grow their brand globally and really broaden your audience and just think global, right? So welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's speak, international, right? Like we often forget what that means. I was actually speaking to somebody this week, and they were saying, so is Powerful Women Today a global brand, or they said an international brand, and they were located in the United States, and I said, well, I'm in Toronto, so yes. Right, we often forget, what does that mean, right, in the world that we live in? What is global, what is international, and the ease of really expanding your audience? So how did you first get, well, Europe is a little bit more advanced in that, if I must say so, in that area of thinking, you know what I mean, an entire region versus a country. So tell me, what got you started with international coaching?
It's a good question. I actually started international coaching as of day one. But I must say, when I started my corporate career, I was working in the Netherlands and living in the Netherlands back then. And my first ever client was Cirque du Soleil, who has all international artists. And back then I was an international tax lawyer. So that was already kind of setting the tone for the rest of my career. So I've always worked internationally. And for me, as a Dutch person living in, and when I started my business in London, it was very normal for me to reach out to some Dutch people in the Netherlands, but also working with people in England. And then because I lived in the United States, I got clients in the United States. So that's kind of how it started. And now I wouldn't change it anymore.
Absolutely. So that experience of building networks, because you had the opportunity to be there, right? And but for someone that hasn't had that scaffolding, say you're born and raised in Florida, and you still practice in Florida, and maybe you begin to expand throughout the United States, especially now with virtual access. But thinking beyond that, right? Like thinking Europe, thinking Australia, like how can someone even begin to do that?
Well, there's a couple of things to do, but the first thing is to realize that, when you, like your example, when you're in Florida and you speak English, that basically everyone all over the world that speaks English like you is a potential client. And I really invite you to think like that. If they can understand you, and if you sell them what they need and what they want, you can work with them. So I think it's really opening yourself up, and a lot has to do with your thinking. And then if you realize, hey, I'm missing out on so many clients by keeping it only local, and how fun would it be to chat with, a client in Australia, or to chat with someone in Asia, I don't know, or in Europe, maybe go to London. There is so many opportunities there. And as soon as you realize that, then you can take the next steps and to make yourself available for them as well.
Yeah, and working with someone like you, of course, because you're able to guide someone and shorten the the learning curve, right? And in that. So, it's interesting you say that, because we often think of us going there, right? Like the gray, chasm of, oh, I am going to try to do business with people in Australia. But we often, and just to pick Australia, but we often forget that there's also tons of people in Australia wanting to do business in North America, right? Or in Europe or in other places. So connecting, the potential of collaborations. It may not be that you go straight to the client, but you may find a collaboration partner, right? So yeah, how would someone even begin to wrap their head around that?
Well, I really like that you mentioned collaboration, because I think it's a powerful way to grow your business. If you're right, because we're so often focused on where's my next client.
Mhm.
And if you're part of a power network, or you're powering up with a power partner, then it actually becomes much easier to get into a certain market. And let's name Powerful Women Today. It is an amazing network with all very strong women and men that have like a world of experience, and they have, again, a big network. So for me, the reason why I do so much business in the United States is because my network is there. I'm, a mentor in Powerful Women
Yep.
Today. I'm part of our other networks as well. And people get to know you. People get to like you. People get to trust you. And that's a very, very easy way to actually reach those countries where you're not based yourself. It is, meeting those collaboration partners, getting to know them very well, and then take it from there.
Yes, and as much as technology definitely has made it easier to expand, right? That's so there's a high level of ease, perceived ease, but there's also a great level of subtleties
Mhm.
that is not as easy. It is easy. I know I'm contradicting myself, but it's not complicated, but it's also easy to make mistakes. And the best, some of them might be, you and I have had brilliant conversations, and will continue to do so, because just like we're making a great effort in making sure that we have more gender neutral language, that we have more inclusive language, right? That looks completely different in different parts of the world. So
Yes.
working with almost a broker, right? Almost a connector, such as yourself. I know myself, because even in our expanding Powerful Women Today, now thinking Europe, now thinking broader, you know, I would not begin to make a move without discussing it with you. You know what I mean? Because is in the same if anybody wanted to do business in Latin America, right? There's just a certain ways that things do not translate automatically. Like if even when we think of movies, when we think of books, when we think of all the marketing, it's not a direct translation. When you look at the titles of everything in Latin America, oftentimes it's like nowhere even near what the English, name was. But locally, right, in order for it to relate to the audience, it needs to change. And that's where you come in. So
Yes.
tell me some funny stories. I love anecdotes, and everybody does, right?
Yeah.
What are some funny stories that you've seen where people rush to, and not learn the subtleties?
Well, there are quite a few funny stories, and that's why it's indeed good to have someone handy. So, to give you an example, I have a brilliant client, and they were looking to expand, indeed, from out of the United States, beyond the United States, into a larger, number of countries. And as such, they created a brochure. And in that, and they asked me, can you review the brochure to see, whether we're spot on and whether it's right. And in the brochure, it said, we're working with people in the United States and abroad. And I said, okay, I'm offended. And they were like, why are you offended? I'm like, well, it's all US centric. I don't want to work with someone who's completely US centric. I want to work with someone who sees me. And now I'm like an afterthought. And it's like you said, it's often those small nuances that a lot of people don't understand. And I had an example yesterday, another client reaching out to me, doing business internationally and struggling with finding the right tone in English. And they are Dutch. And as you may know, Dutch people are very well known for their directness. Living in Spain,
Love, by the way.
yeah, but living here in Spain, I understand we also use fewer words than, for example, in Spain. But, that's aside. So I told her, well, if you're going to use the English language, and especially if you're doing business with British people, be aware that it has to be very polite. And for what feels for us, you have to say it in a very roundabout way, because otherwise you're direct, you're rude. People may not like your tone of voice, and make sure to say please a lot.
Yeah.
And
Lose credibility in the process. Like
yes.
these are not just us being, picky. This is real. And I have to tell you a funny story. So it's not just the language, it's also visual. So I was recently doing just some preliminary work. So I would have you check like the website, the marketing material. Like it's more than just saying, oh, connect with this person. Like it's an overall, just a revisiting of the brand so that it can be positioned internationally. So I was working with this organization that is mid Europe, Central Europe. Country shall remain nameless, but it's not an English-based country. So there's a lot of translation into English. And I was just, checking their website, doing an audit, and I clicked on a link to like a 404 type of page, right? Like this
Yes.
link is broken. But the image that was associated with that were like cross-border guards. It was all cartoony, right? Like, but still, it was cross-border guards with machine guns pointing this like forbidden and pointing to this like hunkering down person. And I remember looking at it, and it's like, oh my God, like no, we A guns, A B, like no, right? And to them, it's just, oh, it's a 404 broken link. Like it probably came with the, with
Oh,
the
yes, template.
site, right? Like, but little things like that, right? Is and I know for a fact that they meant absolutely no harm. You know
No,
what I mean? Like it's an organization that they probably didn't even think of it, right? And but the sensitivities from one side of the world to the other are significant. They're not
yes.
unbreachable, but they are significant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
connecting with you would be a number one, because I love the fact that you have a legal background too, right? So you're seeing it not just from oh, I'm an international coach, marketing, branding, no, there's a compliant
yes,
in a preventative, right,
yes.
measure that goes. Sorry, I interrupted
No, I was going to
you.
say,
So you're about to start.
it's a beautiful thing, because it really helped me to grow my business. And I really, I wouldn't say let's keep you hold back, but you need to be diligent and you need to be open. And that's, I think, the main thing. You need to be very aware of your point of view. And your point of view is always biased. It's always biased. And as soon as you realize that, and as soon as you're open to, okay, well, I'm willing to change that, and I'm willing to make it less biased, then things start. It's almost, that's where the magic happens. And what I really love is And I think this is best compared to anybody who's ever traveled abroad, especially on your own. It's so easy to make connections, right? International connections, and have a brilliant time. And what you will discover is, even though we're very different because of our backgrounds and, the countries we live in, we're also very the same. And if you can find that similarity, that what you solve as a business owner, that problem that everybody has, then you're spot on, and you're guaranteed to, grow your business to that next level internationally.
And do your homework, if, like you said, we're not speaking of malice. We're speaking about cultural differences, which within diversity and inclusion now have become more, you know more really necessary, right? Like ignorance is not always, we say in Canada that ignorance is not a legal defense, right? So now ignorance is really not an answer for somebody missing the mark. So say, for example, that, I've seen so many cute messages that include, references to alcohol, to drinks, right? And they're innocent enough. I remember seeing a quote recently that said, you may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I assure you, you're someone's shot of whiskey, right? Okay, innocent enough. Nobody that reads that, especially how it's presented visually, may take an insult to it. However, if you're marketing to a country where alcohol is not, is not condoned or freely consumed, or there's a lot of stigma to it, that might not land well, right? So doing your homework is key
Yes.
before you begin to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that's not, you don't want to make that faux pas. No.
Yeah. So I have two questions for you that come to mind. One is prices. How do you even begin to index your pricing, right?
That's, to be honest, that's really one of the toughest ones. And the reason why is, and there's a couple of approaches, and there are different examples of how people approach this. But let's take the US as example, because that's what we talked about, right? Most people understand that the US has a certain cost of living, like that's how we call it, right? It's a cost of living, meaning if I live in the US, in general, I spend so much on housing, I spend so much on my groceries. When I go out, I spend so much. And we all know that there's a difference if I live in Nebraska or in New York City. There's already a difference, because we understand that New York City, the prices are way higher. Well, that also is on a global scale. You can understand that most likely in countries like India, the housing and the groceries are very low priced according to the norm in the US. They are low priced, which also means that the people who live in India don't make as much money, right? It's also the income is low.
So relative.
Yeah. So if let's say you have something and you sell it for $5,000, right? That might be, for some people in the US, not a problem at all. Or they might think, well, that's something I need to think about, but it's worth it. I can pay for it. But if you say, well, the cost of living in India is, 20 times lower than in the US, then that $5,000 is actually 20 times as expensive. Yeah. And this is just one example. There are like global examples all over the world. And the thing is, okay, so what do I do with that as a business owner, right? And there are two strategies to follow, depending on whatever you choose. And you can actually see this sometimes in shops where they market to different markets. There is the strategy where you adjust your prices according to the countries. which often means that then, this is for India, this is for certain countries in Europe, because you can't say one Europe, there's a difference as well. And this is, for example, for the US or Northern Americas. That can be done. It is done by several, for example, Zara, clothing brands. They do that. If you go to their website, or H&M, for example, if you go to their website, you can see, and I hope I take brands that people can relate to, but you see, which country is where you're in, and then you get that local website with the local prices. If you a price tag, you will see based on the country, there's a different in price. So it can be done, but it's a lot of work, a lot of things.
Some consideration, right?
Consider, and you can't, you really need to set your pricing right. So what the majority of service providers do, and especially when you're not a global, as in global, multinational, multi-dollar company yet, they say, well, I'm based in Spain. This is what I need as a business owner to keep my lights on and, to have a decent living. And this is the price I sell it for. With that, I understand that certain countries or certain people in certain countries might not be able to afford me. For them, for example, I will provide some valuable insights that are free of charge. But that's a different approach, and many smaller companies on average take that, or they have like lower costs thing available as well for countries where the cost
is real. We don't even need to go that far. Between Canada and the US, there's a 30% premium.
Jeez, yeah.
For something that is $5,000 in the US, you're looking at 30% plus taxation in Canada. So $5,000 price tag in the US may turn close to $10,000 in Canada, right? And we're speaking of bordering countries.
Yeah.
So this is a real consideration, right? And that's why working and speaking with someone like you is a great place to start. So we're going to put all your information in the comment below, and of course you have your chat, your articles in our magazine. You have your international coaching section on our magazine, and you're one of our mentor experts and go-to experts. So thank you so much, Yvonne. We're going to continue this because I have more questions for you. So we'll come back in a couple of weeks and continue our international coaching, how to expand your business. Thank you so much. And until next time, everyone.
Thank you.
Empowering women on a global scale. This has been Powerful Women Today with Carolina Billings. To learn more about how you can join and transform your life and the lives of women everywhere with professional speaking, publishing, podcasting, and web TV, visit powerfulwomentoday.com. Remember to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you